This is something that I was not familiar with 5 years ago. And I thought at that point I was extremely financially sophisticated, but I was wrong. There are so many other areas, in the financial world that I'm just not familiar with. And as I learned more and more, instead of me keeping it to myself, I wanted to share it with other people.
I didn't want to be a doctor. I wanted to be a lawyer. But my mother, who was a nurse, she made up her mind and made up my mind that I had to be a doctor. I would spend sleepless nights on Zillow. Literally, people were sleeping, I'm on Zillow.
That was you generating your luck, right? They didn't see that. All they see is that end result.
Welcome to Negotiation Mastery. This is the number one negotiation podcast where we talk about all things negotiation, starting from negotiating with your kids to negotiating for $1 million deals and everything in between. Initially, this show was designed for women, but welcome to listen. We have people from different parts of the world, different industries and different stages in their careers who come on this show and they share their experience with us. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Esomeme, an internal medicine physician now turned negotiation strategist. I have with me today an orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Kirk Campbell. He is an orthopedic surgeon. However, he's pivoting, and while he's still a surgeon, he's doing something different. And I think there's a lot we can learn from him. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here. Love your podcast. Lots of, really valuable information, shared for your female and, your male listeners as well.
Yes. So, Kirk, why did you want to be a doctor?
A great question. So medicine is something that I'm very passionate about. From a very young age, ever since I was age 6, I told my mom I wanted to be a doctor because I wanted to help people.
Yeah.
Right. I went to the physician, I saw the great care that they provided me, my family. It's such an honor and privilege to care for people, especially when they're most vulnerable.
Yeah.
So from that, tender age of 6, everything I've done has been towards becoming, a physician, going into medicine. Fell in love, with orthopedics in high school, and every day now I'm able to really, live my dream.
Wow. What a blessing, Kirk. Not everyone gets to live their dream. Some people still have this desire of, oh, there's this life that they want, but just being able to say you live your dream, it's a luxury to actually live your dream. And it's not like you're 100 years old, you are still in your prime and you're living your dreams. What a gift.
It's a wonderful, wonderful gift, right?
Yes.
I still can't believe that they pay me, to do this wonderful, job. It's such a great career. It's given so much to me, my family. I get a chance to take care, from, the young athlete all the way, up to our older, more mature, athlete. In orthopedics, we're all about restoring function. Right. And I do sports medicine. So I'm able to, get people back, on whether it's the basketball court or just, life in general. So, truly an honor to take care of people.
Living the life we want, it's really a gift. We have to fight for it, we have to struggle for it. And the journey to getting into med school, it's not the easiest journey on earth. It requires a lot of grit. You're writing the MCATs, your scores are not so great, you study, you make it greater, and then getting into med school, and you're in the same place with the smartest people in the world, or people who think they're the smartest in the world. And then you get into med school, you graduate, and then you went for a very competitive fellowship. So what kept you going? How do you develop that muscle to keep going even when it's difficult? I'm assuming it's you had to develop the muscle because of your accomplishments. I know you were not born and then handed your license and say, hey, Kirk, go practice author. You worked for it. So how did you develop that grit?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's something that I give my mother all the credit in the world for, right? So my mother, she didn't finish high school. She had to work at a very young age to take care of her family when I was very young. She made a difficult decision to even move away from. I was born in Jamaica, grew up in Jamaica until I was age 9. She made that difficult decision to move away so she could support my brother and I. At the time she moved to the Bahamas, and we were raised with one of her best friends until I moved to the U.S. To live with my father. So seeing her commitment, her hard work, she's always stressed the importance of hard work. Listen, we may not be, the smartest, but nobody will ever work harder than me and anything that we do. So that drive that I saw from her commitment, to excellence. She may not have the degrees, behind her name, but just her grit, intelligence, her passion, and support is what really drove me on those difficult times. Right, you're taking your exams, you're in the room, with people who may come from better means. They may have more resources, but you know what? That work ethic is something that I had in my favor, and I've been very fortunate throughout my career. So again, it just goes down to my mother's commitment.
Huh, that's very similar to my story. Well, I didn't want to be a doctor, to be honest with you, Kirk. I wanted to be a lawyer. But my mother, who was a nurse, she made up her mind and made up my mind that I had to be a doctor, and I went with the flow. I didn't
Mhm.
like I remember chemistry was hard. She first made sure I went to a private school. It's not like she had all the resources or we had all the resources, but she made sure I went to a private school. And when chemistry was hard, she got a private teacher to come teach me. And I'm like, she's doing all this work. Then I just have to go through. And I'm thankful because being a doctor is the highest honor of my life, but it's my mother. However, not everyone has that support system that I had, that I knew my mother was there for me. So if your mother wasn't there for you, do you think you would have been able to create this life? Because sometimes I tell people you need to create your own community. I'll give an example. I just moved to Dubai. I'm in the UAE. Came in here, didn't have any friends, didn't know anybody. But I'm older now. I have more resources. But I'm curating my own community. I'm curating my own support system. So, what do you think about that idea for those people who may not have the support system that we had growing up, but they're looking for something way bigger than their current situation?
Yeah, so I think community is extremely important, right? That is what, it takes a village,
Yeah.
to, really raise a child. It takes a village to achieve your goals. Building a community of like-minded, people is critically, important. I think mentorship, and sponsorship, are really, really, important. Seeking out advice, from people who may have already walked that path, right? So you don't have to make the same mistakes that they did, right? Learn from their experience, learn from their, trials and tribulations. So that way you have an easier time. And that's something I'd encourage any young person out there, even older person, is build a community of like-minded individuals, right? To make sure that you're able to, kind of speed up your learning process.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. Like just having mentors are great, but I think the best is having sponsors who end up putting their money where their mouth is, so they kind of push you to the next level. Um, so what have you been working on lately that's different from medicine?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, similar to, everybody else in a high-powered, career, I was maxing out my 401k, I had my brokerage account, I was investing, I thought I was doing all of the right things. I had an outstanding financial planner who said that everything was on track, for me to retire in a certain age. I have two young, daughters, and, as they kept on getting a little bit older, their activity level increased, right? So now they're into sports, they're into dance and music. And, as a busy orthopedic surgeon, my time is a very limited, asset. So, I found myself missing some of these activities, which, really, it's important for me to kind of be there, for them. So I wanted to figure out a different way that I could be, present. So, as an orthopedic surgeon, as with any other career, I exchanged time for money. right? So if I'm not present, if I'm not seeing patients and I'm not operating, I'm not generating revenue. So a couple of years ago, a good friend introduced me to the world of alternative asset investment, where you're able to invest in institutional grade assets that are professionally managed. And instead of, we're all familiar with REITs, which, the Black Rocks and Vanguards of the world, you invest in these, real estate deals.
Not everyone listening to this podcast is familiar with REITs. Can you explain REITs just a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So a REIT is a real estate, investment fund that you're able to invest in either through your retirement account, or through your brokerage account. And that gives you a partial ownership within the stock of that, right? So it's like an exchange traded fund. And the beauty of the real estate thing is you're invested in this asset, but these companies, they typically have multiple different real estate, like say multifamily, for instance, many different buildings within that, and these buildings generate revenue. And then they pay you, whether it's a dividend, on that. So you're able to make money off of it. Over time, they're able to stabilize these assets because people are paying their rents, the asset values increasing, and then they sell it and they give you a share of the profit. So that's typically, in a very basic sense, that's how a REIT, functions. So what people started doing, they started syndicating these deals. So it's a real estate syndication. And what a real estate syndication is, you'll purchase ideally an institutional type asset that's similarly managed, but you're able to invest in it privately. That gives you the opportunity to benefit from the fantastic tax benefits that real estate offers, right? You're able to receive more of the profit when that is sold, right? So it's really a fantastic way to generate passive income. You get cash flow. There is depreciation, which some people are not familiar with, and what that is that everything has a life cycle. Everything in the building has a certain lifespan. And, the government or the IRS has figured out what everything is, time cycle is, right? Your carpet is only worth a certain amount of years, and you're able to depreciate that over time because the value goes down because its useful life cycle is expired. And now, with the most recent tax bill, there's something called bonus depreciation, which allows you to take, instead of waiting, 15, 27, or 39 years, depending on the asset class that you're in, you're able to take a lot of that in year one. That's a very powerful thing, in terms of, tax benefit there. So when you invest in these REITs with the bigger companies, you don't get any of that tax benefit. But when you invest in a multifamily syndication or any other type of syndication, you're able to get that tax benefit, which really supercharges your wealth building journey.
But you know what, Kirk? Many people would say, just being an orthopedic surgeon, that's already, you already have a fat salary. So they would say, so why this? You already have something really good going for you. Then why are you switching gears or adding other, well, no, it's not complicated, but just other. Why are you doing this at this point in time?
So fantastic question. So you're correct. As an orthopedic surgeon, you are well compensated for, the fantastic work that you do. But it's more about building generational wealth, right? And for me, it's about adding value to people's lives. It's an abundance mindset, right? This is something that I was not familiar with 5 years ago. And I thought at that point I was extremely financially sophisticated. But I was wrong. There's so many other areas in the financial world that I'm just not familiar with. And as I learned more and more, instead of me keeping it to myself, I wanted to share it with other people. right? I don't think, alternative assets should be 100% of your investment portfolio. I think it should be a part of a well diversified portfolio. And it's extremely important to have assets that are uncorrelated to the stock market. And alternative assets, especially multifamily, gives you that opportunity to have an uncorrelated hard asset, right? So the thing I like about multifamily investment and why it makes perfect sense, for me and my wealth building, strategies, that it's somebody could tweet and, the stock market goes down,
Yeah.
right? And nothing is intrinsically changed about the value of that stock,
Right.
except that somebody tweeted something that somebody else doesn't like. And all of a sudden that stock is, 10% less.
Right.
That does not happen with a hard asset, right? So in alternative investment, you have that property that you invested in, right? That property over time will continue to add value. And if you study the world's wealthiest family, all the world's wealthiest family offices, real estate plays a substantial role in all of their wealth, right? That's one of the oldest assets there is. And over time, real estate outperforms the stock market. So back to your question about why would an orthopedic surgeon who has a decent salary would want to invest, it's about diversification, right? It's about building generational wealth. It's about, really spreading the gospel that I was not aware of and really trying to add value to other people's lives so they could explore it and figure out if it makes sense for them and their financial journey, right? And, I just want to put in the disclaimer. I am not, a CPA. I am not your financial advisor, right? This is not financial advice. Please talk to your, CPA and
Yeah.
attorney, to make sure it makes sense for you and your personal financial picture.
Yes, I agree because I got lucky, right? So, this whole bonus depreciation, we had it before. And so I kind of cashed in on it when it was like 100%. And, I got Airbnbs almost like back to back. So that way I really cashed in on it. So I got lucky. And I think that's just like you said, I'm not a financial advisor, but I think the
Mhm.
fastest way to become a millionaire is through real estate. It does two things. If you do it right, it cash flows, and then it's appreciating as it's cash flowing. So, and then on top of that, it helps you with your taxes. So it's like it's like you have three bullets
Absolutely.
with the same gun. So that's one thing I have personally enjoyed with real estate. But my friends, they said,
Yeah.
I said I was going to do a segment on how to cross over to seven figures easily. They were like, well, Gloria, your story is not typical. Don't go share information that people would do and not. I'm like, all right, I'll be quiet, but I can share my own story because I think
But no, but I think your story is a powerful one, right? Because this is something that's not taught in medical school. I learned nothing about this, nothing about
no.
finances, in medical school. And, when you're finished, everybody sees, oh, there's a newly minted doctor. If anything, you become a target, right? So it's critically important for us to, spread the gospel, of another path outside, of the stock market that people may not be aware of, and that, of these other wealthy, high income, people are aware of and are taking advantage of. Again, should not be 100% of what you do, but I think it should be, a part of a well diversified portfolio. And you don't have to be a millionaire. You don't have to make, six figures to invest in real estate. So, that part that your friend said, everybody's not, the same, but, uh, a response to that is that everybody didn't spend hundreds of $1,000s in loans and starting, life and careers, in their late 20s or mid 30s.
These are
Uh,
doctors. These are doctors. So they're doctors. They're like us. Like these are my friends who are doctors. They're
yes.
like, well, because there is the there is the part of being very strategic. I'm strategic, right? I would think through, but then when strategy meets luck, it's like dynamite. So they felt like there was luck to my strategies.
Well, but you know what? There was not luck because you put in the work. They did not see you putting in the work that was required. You generated your own luck, right? Luck is created while others sleep. So while others were sleeping and vacationing,
Literally.
you were putting in that work, right? You did your research, right? So you generated your own luck. So, I would kind
You're
of push
right.
back a little bit on that.
You're right. Because I would spend sleepless nights on Zillow. Like, I'm on Zillow. Like, literally, people are sleeping. I'm on Zillow looking at all the new. I'm like, okay, no, this doesn't look good. This.
That was you generating your luck, right? They didn't see that. All they see is that end result, right? For the sports fan out there, people don't see the thousands of shots that Stephen Curry makes every day,
Yeah.
right? People don't see the blood, sweat, and tears that LeBron James puts in, right? Shohei Ohtani. They don't see the work that he puts in. All you see is that final product,
Yes.
right? So like, oh, he's so talented. It's just a gift that he was given. No,
No.
right? He may have had some of that gift, but he put in that work. You put in that work,
Thank you.
right? That's a
No,
testament to you and your hard work.
I'm gonna cut this clip and send it to my friends who said that. It's like, Gloria, you just got. I'm gonna like, I'm not joking. I'm gonna cut this clip and send it to her.
So listen, while she was at the spa, you were putting in that work.
So how do you manage, because we are trained to be doctors, and for the most part, just like you were talking about earlier, while we were in medical school, there was really no external influence. It's more like how well you can master your materials, how well you can ace the next exam, the next test, and then, oh, how well then you're done with med school, what specialty you matched into, and then it's how well you did in residency. So our identity is very tied to our profession and what we do. So how do you balance the scrutiny, the I don't know if there's criticism, but just people seeing you doing something different? How do you balance that? And then also putting information out there that's not medicine. How do you balance that with all the visibility you're getting?
Yeah, so it's funny you would bring that up because I just had a LinkedIn post on this very topic. So in the beginning it was more a curiosity, right? Oh, he's just an orthopedic surgeon. What does he know about investing? What does he know about financing? Right? But the way that you get people to see you as an expert is the same way you got people to see you as an expert in your primary field, right?
Yeah.
You show up consistently, you prepare, you add value there, right? It's not about dabbling, something I'm really passionate about. Right. So you deliver results, and over time, that curiosity becomes respect. Right. And like, oh, okay, he knows what he's talking about. All right. He understands what a cap rate is. Right. And then, when their investments, they start seeing returns, and then, that's when they get really excited.
You're right.
Is like, this guy knows what he's talking about. And, I think it's very important, for me personally to be in this space. I understand the rigors of medical training. I understand, the importance of, the hard work that went into, having that capital to hand it over to somebody, who may not understand how hard you worked for that money. That's difficult, right? So the most of the real estate deals that I've invested in as a, limited partner were with other physicians because we were like-minded, right? I had a great conversation with them. They understood the plight. They understood how much effort went into really generating that money. And I
Yeah.
knew they would treat my capital like their capital. And that's something that's very important, for me, and my business partners, is that any deal that we have on the real estate, front, we are personally investing our own capital in these deals. there has to be alignment, right?
Right.
Not only am I investing my own capital, my family and friends are investing that capital. That's how much I believe in any deal that I'm bringing, to our limited, partners. It's a partnership, right? So, the partner part is the most important part
Yeah.
of any, real estate deal that, we put together. We're about clear communication. It's more about uplifting the entire, community. And, for us physicians, I think we need people, in our corner who have our best interest in mind.
Yeah. So what I hear you say is you not necessarily pivoting, but you adding an additional career to what you already do. That two things are really
It's a different layer,
correct.
right?
It's a different layer.
So I love my job, right?
Yes,
That's been my identity for my entire adult life. I'm an orthopedic surgeon, but there are other things I'm passionate about.
of course.
I'm passionate about real estate. I'm passionate about helping other people build generational wealth. And I think the two really tie into each other. So I'm a big researcher. And the iterative process of doing research for what I do to improve the outcomes of my patients, it's the same process I go through in the real estate front, right? I'm critically evaluating deals. We're underwriting these deals. We're looking at population trends. We're looking at job growth, right? We're looking at what other supplies come to the market, right? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Right? There's so many different factors that we look at. And it's similar what I'm doing when I'm evaluating the research study, right? Did we improve the patient outcome, right? What are the patient reported outcome scores? Do they agree? What do our x-rays look like? What does the MRI look like? Do the patients get back to their chosen, sport? Do they get back to are they back to work? What's the time frame? Right. So it's the same process that we go through on a medical standpoint. I think that's what makes, physicians in the real estate space, so valuable. We
Yes.
understand how to look at that data and we understand how to put that context together.
So what I hear you say is for you to gain the respect, just to show that you're not dabbling, is you do your research and you show up consistently sharing the information from your research, and then you have your skin, and then you have some skin in the game. So you're not just taking
Absolutely.
the
I always have skin in the game, a significant amount of skin in the game. And I think, showing that alignment is critically important, right? I'm not going to ask somebody to invest their hard-earned capital in something that I don't believe in.
yes.
And, me investing my own personal capital, getting my family and friends to invest that capital, that's the ultimate alignment.
Yes, I agree. So then let's switch gears just a tiny little bit. So there are people who feel trapped in they just so many physicians, so many lawyers, so many people, not just doctors. There are people who feel trapped getting their income from just one source. And I believe for you to start having multiple streams of income, I think you can only be truly wealthy when you have multiple streams of income. So how would you recommend they negotiate with themselves? Because first of all, you have to negotiate with yourselves because there's so many voices you're hearing, so many doubts, so many voices. So how would you recommend they negotiate with themselves so they can get out of that trap?
So critically important to, kind of escape that analysis paralysis, right? That's what it is, right? It's analysis paralysis. You look at all these different factors, like, oh, that's a good one, but it's so risky, right? What's even more risky? It's more risky relying on one source of income. If you look at all the world's wealthiest people, they have at least seven different streams of income coming in, right? So all of these highly paid professions, doctors, lawyers, business owners, right? You're exchanging time for money. If you're not working, you're not showing up, you're not getting a paycheck.
Yeah.
When you flip the script, and what really did it for me was the Purple Bible, right? Robert Kiyosaki, Rich
Yeah,
Dad, Poor Dad,
yes,
right?
yes, yes,
That really, flips the script and really turns the light on, right? You have to figure out what quadrant you want to be in.
yeah,
Once you have ownership and you have assets rather than liabilities, that's when you start, really supercharging that wealth building. So that negotiation that you have to, do it yourself is like, do you have the life that you want, right? Are you able to leave the impact that you want, right? If, something happens to your main career, your main income driver, will you be able to continue living that life that you want? It's important to have income that shows up even when you don't, right? We call it that mailbox money, right? There's nothing like, the beginning of the month, that mailbox money shows up for a decision that I made 4 or 5 years ago. That's a powerful driver,
yes.
right? So you do your due diligence, you're investing in yourself, right? So, and I think that's the thing that people find, difficult, right? What if it doesn't go right? But what if it does,
Right.
right? You have to change that mind frame. That's important.
But there has to be some balance there, because between being reckless and taking a strategic risk. Because if you're reckless, because what you talked about was doing your research, so that helps with that recklessness. So once you do your research, then whatever step you're taking, it's more strategic rather than just being pure risk.
Correct, correct. You have to do your research, right? That due diligence piece is extremely important, right? Whatever deals you're analyzing, make sure it makes sense for you. Again, I keep on harping back to the fact it should not be 100% of what you do. It should be a part of your financial, journey, right? And I think, when you're negotiating with yourself, you have to look at your entire financial picture, right? You cannot be 100%, in your 401k because you can't really touch that meaningfully until you retire.
Yeah,
Right. What about, the 30 years that you're working? So I think, a lot of people, there's delayed gratification. A lot of these high, impact our professions, physicians, lawyers, they put a lot of time into school and delaying gratification, and a lot of people fall into the trap of pushing off, well, I'll do it when I'm retired, right? But life is for living. Right. You may not be as healthy as you think you will be when you're retired.
right.
Unfortunately, some of us may not make it to retirement, right? So, and that's what alternative asset investing does for you. It gives you the ability to buy back your time freedom, right? That's one of the beauties of that, asset class with the cash flow that it gives you,
Yeah,
right? You're really able to change that trajectory and spend more time with your family doing the things you enjoy.
that's beautiful. So this concept of active and passive income. Um, so when I did real estate, even though I still do real estate, even though I was actively in medicine 100%, and I used to call it my side gig, passive income. To be honest with you, it wasn't really passive. It was active. I'll give you an example. I had an Airbnb. It took me a while. When I first started the whole Airbnb thing, it took me a while before I could get that flow, getting the people to clean. Sometimes I've just finished my 12 plus hours shift. I get home, I take off my clothes. I'm like, okay, I'll just chill now and then watch TV. And then my phone rings. The guest says, we don't have enough tissue paper. I'm like, how come my cleaners did not leave tissue paper? And then I'm taking tissue paper, I'm driving over there because I started with Airbnbs around where I lived, and I'm going over there to go drop it off. Or my cleaners are not there to clean. I don't clean my home, but I'm there cleaning the Airbnb. I'm like, how did I get myself into this? Until I finally found
Mhm,
the system where I found people who clean for me, and then I don't have to do all of that anymore.
mhm.
But it was never passive. Some people, do you think people can actually make substantial income from passive income? Going back to even when we look at the tax code, because the tax code is it's designed in such a way that for you to be able to depreciate your assets and then offset some of your taxes, it has to be some form of active real estate investment. Either you're doing the short-term rentals and then you can, that's kind of like a loophole, or you have a spouse who manages your business, who does the management for you, or you put in a certain number of hours. So what's your take on that? And I'm really
So,
curious. So just
yeah, so lots and lots of, really fantastic nuggets that you just dropped, within that question. So, to address your main question, passive income is extremely important, right? So what you're describing was not very passive, right? That's very, very active. And the beauty of invested in multifamily syndications, that is a passive thing, right? You're a limited partner. All of your activity goes in, upfront when you make that investment. That asset is then managed professionally, right? You have professional on-site property management. We have an on-site maintenance person. You are not getting phone calls about toilets and toilet paper. This is something that, you sit back and, whether it's monthly or quarterly, you're going to get your dividend. So let me break down what a typical deal looks like within, a multifamily syndicated deal. So typical minimum investment, 100,000 to 50,000 are typical minimum investments. From that $100,000 deal, you'll get, a percentage of that multifamily property. Typically, with 100% bonus depreciation, you're able to get passive tax losses that, if you're in the 37% tax bracket, may equal about 35 to $40,000 of tax losses passive. So these are paper losses.
right.
These real estate deals typically then have like a preferred return, right? So you're getting your money every month or every quarter. Let's say it's an 8% preferred return. These deals typically run for about 5 years. So 8 times 5, that's $40,000 worth of passive income that you would get. When the deal then sells, ideally there's been the property value has increased because rents have organically grown. You may have renovated the property, so now the property is worth more. So you sell the property, that $100,000 that you put in, you get your money back. So right now you're at $140,000. You got your $40,000, from your preferred return. You got your $100,000 back. And then, the business plan usually calls for, about a 2x equity multiple, which means that you get double your money. So from the proceeds of the profit, you get another $100,000. Let's also add in that depreciation that you saw, right? So total, that's about $280,000. So your 100,000 just became about 280, 275,000, dollars. That's the power of investing in the real estate syndication, right? And that money that you got from your preferred return, essentially that could be tax free because that paper loss that you have decreases, those taxes. So, again, I'm not a CPA, I'm not a tax attorney. This is not financial advice. This is purely for educational content.
Yes.
But that's the power of, a syndicated real estate deal on a very basic level.
Level. So it's so what I hear you say is it's not active, but then the return it's almost equivalent to you investing in an active portfolio.
Correct, but you're getting a much bigger return, right? So that average, annual return is, anywhere from, 16, 18, 20%. Where you look at the stock market over time, it goes up 7%. So, you're outperforming the stock market. And, if you look at what real estate has done compared to the stock market, over the last 20 years, real estate, I think, is 3 to 3.5x the stock market in terms of total returns, accounting for the tax benefits that you get.
Yes.
That's pretty darn powerful.
It is. Because if I look at my portfolio, I agree. Just personally, my real estate it's been phenomenal. Yeah, so I'm like all up for anything real estate. I'm all in. I'm a believer when it comes to real estate because it just does, like you said, one switch does not affect the value and if of the value of your property. It takes a lot for the value to go down, you know. So let me ask another question. This has to do with negotiation. So personally, when I negotiate, my main superpower in negotiating is knowing the value that I bring, knowing the service I'm going to render, or knowing what my presence would bring in the environment. So it's just knowing my value. So when you negotiate, so what's your number one superpower?
So my number one superpower, similar to you, I know the value, that I, bring, right? So first and foremost, you have to know yourself, right? Know what you're, looking for, and, go into any negotiation with the end in mind, right? And you also have to understand that every negotiation is a give and take, right? You have your non-negotiables, that you have, whether you're negotiating a contract, you're negotiating a business deal, whatever that negotiation is. Know what your intrinsic value is, know what your non-negotiables are, right? And stick to them, right? You really have to stick to them, to ensure that you're getting that value, that you think you intrinsically deserve. Obviously, you have to do your research on the back end to make sure that, your ideas are backed by hard data, right? So showing up to a negotiation with hard data is critically important, right? If you're a physician, know what the market is within that area for your specialty. Kind of know what the low end of the spectrum is, know what the high end of the spectrum is, and kind of figure out where you want to end up. Figure out how you're going to bring value to that health system. How you're going to bring value to, that practice. Do you have a unique skill set that the practice may not have that will generate even more revenue? Right. If you're an attorney, like, hey, maybe you're a specialist in, this very niche area, know what that's worth. Right. Look at other practices that may have it, figure out how much business they've sent away, in that one area that you'll now keep in house, so know your value, do your research, and have your non-negotiables. And, most importantly, just believe in yourself,
Yes.
right? That's the most important thing.
Yes. That's so good. Believe in yourself. Know your non-negotiables. So one last question before we end this show. So I want you to look back to Kirk, who was 7, 8, 9. Not Kirk anymore. That's another person. Might be someone who's listening. They have a child. What words of encouragement would you have with that person in negotiating the kind of life that they want to live?
So, my number one advice, so I do a lot of, mentorship, talk to a lot of, college students, medical students, residents and fellows, and even young, career, physicians, is that always think about have the end in mind,
Hmm.
right? Build a network, build a community, right? Look for like-minded people who are able to support your growth. But most importantly, right, I tell this to my medical students: dress for the job you want, not
Nice.
for the job you have. Prepare for the job that you want, not for the job that you have, right? So your reputation is all you have, right? So make sure you build your reputation, right? Your reputation should be a hard worker. You're showing up prepared, right? That preparation is critically important. Going back to, what you said when your friends, called you lucky, that was preparation, right? So make sure you're well prepared. When you show up, people know what to expect. They're going to expect nothing but the best. You're going to be well prepared, right? You're going to be completely on point. So, that's the number one advice. Hard work, just be dedicated, be prepared, right? And prepare for the job that you want, not for the job that you have.
Wow, that's really good. I believe anyone who takes that advice would, first of all, because the first thing is, you said you start with the end in mind. So now you know what it is you want to be. So if you're a young kid, you want to be an orthopedic surgeon, you want to be a real estate investor, you want to be an internal medicine doctor, you have, or a lawyer, a teacher, whatever it is you want to be, you have that in mind. And then you give them all the things they need to do to get to where they're going. You talked about mentorship, you talked about hard work, you talked about having the mindset of achieve, of having achieved already. So dress like you want to, where you like, dress for the job you want, not where you are. I think that's just brilliant. And truly, 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 anyone who truly follows all those things that you just said, and not just for any young person, so just for me, for you, for anyone, because we all have aspirations, we all have goals. So if the aspiration that we have is high up here, then if we follow all those things that you said, then we would definitely get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I agree. Sky is really the limit, right? Again, I didn't start my, real estate, journey until I was like, much later, in life, or is ready, well into my career,
Yes.
when I decided to, kind of make this a part of what I do, a very complementary part to what I, do, and it's something I'm extremely passionate about. I've always had a entrepreneurial drive, but I didn't know what to really dedicate that to. And, I'm super happy that I was able to, find, real estate, and kind of made that, my true passion project. And it's very complementary to the things that we do,
Yeah.
in medicine.
So maybe we would have this conversation in a year or two, and then we would look at the trends that have happened in the last, look at the trends, the before and after, and
Yeah.
see what has
I,
changed.
I, I would love to really, really enjoy listening to your show. You're adding so much value,
Oh,
to your, audience. It's extremely important to negotiate for the life you want,
yeah.
not for the life you have.
Oh, what better way to end this show? You just kind of, that's kind of like the tagline for the show. Okay, so this is how I end the show. I give an advice. I tell my audience one thing they should go do based on the conversation that we had. There were so many talking to Kirk. There was just so much stuff he says. I'm like, oh, I'm going to ask them to do this. He says something else, but I think the part I like the most, because you mentioned it like two, three times. Oh no, you talked about hard work two or three times. But I like the part of community, because sometimes even when you're not hardworking and you're with people who are hardworking, you learn that culture. So I want you to purposefully do an audit of the people around your life, and then decide who you want to keep. I'm not saying you cancel people, it just means you spend less time with those people, and then purposefully choose your community. So you're spending time with people who are going in the same direction, or who have already gone ahead of you. So your life moves in that direction. And the second ask I have is, if you haven't subscribed to this podcast, please subscribe, share. Let's create a community of people who are negotiating for the life that they truly want. And then, last but not least, as I leave you guys every day, I believe this from the bottom of my heart, that everyone listening to this podcast has the potential to be great. So go be great. Thank you.